The Golden Voices. The Golden Voices were a ragtag crew if ever there was one, a patchwork of talent and desperation. They came from every dusty corner of the country, all rough edges and scraped knuckles, their voices as weathered as the land they traveled through. There was Albert, a thin wisp of a man with a voice like molasses, and Jonas, who had once been a preacher before life took the holy fire out of him. They were joined by Big Walter, whose booming laugh could shake dust from the rafters. The twins, Addie and Alton, who could harmonize so sweetly it would bring a tear to a man's eye. Then there was Mouse, small, dark-eyed, silent as a stone, but who could play the fiddle like the devil himself. Last was Jed, who led the troop, his voice worn rough and thin like old leather, but still able to coax a crowd into forgetting their troubles for a while. It was California they were after, where they'd heard gold sat in streams for the taking, where a man could shake off his hard luck past and start fresh. They packed what little they had in an old wagon, hitched it to a half-broke mule, and set off westward, singing to the dust and the endless sky. They made their way through towns so small and lonely, the townsfolk came out just to hear a tune. And at every stop, they'd sing their hearts out, leaving their audience laughing, crying, or dancing in the street. One hot, yellow-baked afternoon, with dust caking their throats and the land spreading wide and dry around them, they found themselves surrounded. A small band of Native American warriors, their faces set in stone, blocked their path. The Golden Voices didn't have much worth stealing, only a few tins of beans, some scraps of bread, and their voices. But they weren't fools either. They knew desperation when they saw it, and they knew how to make peace where peace might be found. Jed stepped forward, hands empty, voice low, and offered up a song. The others joined in, singing with dust in their lungs, singing for their lives. Maybe it was the hum of Mouse's fiddle, or the way Addie's high notes floated on the wind, but something softened in the warriors' eyes. When the song was done, the warriors let them pass, though they left a bit leaner, a bit hungrier. Their troubles weren't over, though. They pushed on, over desert and scrub and mountains that seemed to go on forever, until one night they were caught up by a band of outlaws, hard men with dirt under their nails and greed in their eyes. The outlaws didn't take to robbing them outright. No, they had a meaner sense of fun. Instead, they held them at gunpoint and demanded a performance, forcing the Golden Voices to sing and play long into the night. The entertainers wore themselves down, singing until their voices were hoarse, their limbs shaking from exhaustion. But they kept at it, playing tune after tune, and by the first light of dawn, the outlaws had grown sleepy, nodding off one by one, and the Golden Voices took their chance and slipped away into the gray morning. They crossed into California at last, their bodies broken, their clothes in tatters, but something in their hearts still stirred. They were close, so close they could taste it. And that was when they met a tribe. A quiet, welcoming people who fed them, let them rest, and showed them kindness they hadn't known since they'd left home. They stayed a week, maybe more, sharing songs and laughter. For the first time in a long time, they felt something like peace. Mouse, the quiet fiddle player, seemed taken with the life there, with the simple rhythm of it, and when it came time to leave, he stayed behind, settling himself into a life he could have never imagined when they first set out. They limped into California, a smaller group than they'd started, and each of them changed by the land, by the people they'd met. by what they'd lost and given up along the way. Albert went off to try his hand at law, turning his silver tongue to the courtroom. Big Walter, dreaming of riches in his heart, took to the hills with a pickaxe, seeking gold that he'd sung about for so long. And Jed, well, he fell for a girl named Lucy, a call girl with a laugh that rang out like church bells and a kindness that gentled the rough edges of his soul. They lost one of their own not long after they arrived. Alton, one of the twins, who'd always been a little frail, just couldn't take the strain of the journey. They buried him in the hills, where the land was soft and quiet. When the last shovelful of dirt was thrown, they stood there, hands clasped, voices low, and they sang for him. They sang of the road, of the sun, of the wind that had pushed them forward, and the dreams that had kept them alive. They were no longer the golden voices by the end of it. Not really. They were scattered across the West, each one a part of that wild land now. Their voices carried off by the wind, whispers in the hills, echoes of songs that once filled the empty spaces of America.